My name is Ava. I am 11 years old, and I live in a large suburban house in the United States. My mother didn't look back when she walked out the door. She stood in the entryway with her expensive suitcase in one hand and a crumpled $20 bill in the other. I was standing there in my socks, just 11 years old, waiting for a hug that never came. Instead, she pressed the money into my palm. "You're independent now, Ava," she said. She smiled at me, a bright, fake smile, like she was handing me a prize instead of leaving me alone for a whole month. She checked her watch, adjusted her sunglasses, and turned away. Then she opened the door and stepped out into the sunlight. The heavy front door clicked shut. That click was the loudest thing I had ever heard. It echoed through the hallway of our big, empty house. I looked down at the bill in my hand. $20, that was it. That was what she thought I was worth. The silence wrapped around me instantly. It wasn't peaceful. It was terrifying. I didn't know it yet, standing there in the quiet, but that $20 bill was going to cost her everything. She thought she was leaving a child who would stay silent. She was wrong. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? My name is Ava. I am 11 years old. The lock on the front door clicked. It was a heavy, final sound. I stood in the hallway for a long time, staring at the wood grain of the door. I waited for it to open again. I waited for my mother to rush back in, laughing, and say, "Oh, Ava, I forgot my keys," or "I can't believe I almost left you." But the door stayed closed. I looked at the $20 bill in my hand. It was old and soft. The corners were bent. I smoothed it out against my jeans. $20. That was supposed to last me a month. No, she had said there was an emergency card. "You're independent now," she had said. I walked into the living room. It was huge. My parents liked big, open spaces. They liked white furniture and glass tables. They didn't like clutter. Usually, I felt like clutter. I always tried to make myself small in this house, to fit in the corners so I wouldn't mess up the view. Now I was the only thing in the room. I sat on the white sofa. I wasn't allowed to sit there usually, not without a blanket underneath me. I sat right in the middle. I waited to feel powerful. I waited to feel independent. Instead, I just felt small. The first few hours weren't so bad. It was like a game. I turned on the big TV. I watched cartoons that my dad usually called brain rot. I walked around in my socks, sliding on the hardwood floors. I pretended I was a queen in a castle. But castles have servants, and castles have feasts. By 6 o'clock, the sun started to go down. The shadows in the living room got long and skinny. They looked like fingers reaching across the floor. My stomach made a noise. It was a low growl. "Okay," I said out loud. My voice sounded weird in the empty room. It bounced off the walls. "Dinner time." I went to the kitchen. The kitchen was spotless. My mother didn't cook. She said cooking made the house smell like grease. We usually ordered food, or they went out to fancy restaurants and brought me back a box of leftovers. I opened the fridge. A bright light hit my face. The air that came out was cold and smelled like nothing. The shelves were glass and clean. There was a bottle of white wine, a jar of olives, a container of artisanal mustard, a bag of spinach that looked slimy at the bottom, and a carton of almond milk that felt light when I picked it up. That was it. I closed the fridge. "It's okay," I whispered. "The emergency card." My mom had left a Visa card on the counter. It was a prepaid one she got from the bank. She told me it was for emergencies and necessities. I picked it up. It felt plastic and cool. I decided to order a pizza. A large pepperoni pizza with extra cheese. Just thinking about it made my mouth water. I grabbed the landline phone. I dialed the number for the pizza place down the street. "Tony's Pizza, pickup or delivery?" a man asked. "Delivery," I said. I tried to make my voice sound deeper, like an adult. "I need a large pepperoni." "Address," I gave him my address. "That'll be $22.50, cash or card?" "Card," I said confidently. I read him the numbers on the front of the card. I read the expiration date. I read the 3 little numbers on the back. There was a silence on the line. I heard him typing. "I'm sorry, miss," the man said. "Cards declined." My heart stopped. "What?" "It didn't go through. Says not activated or invalid." "You want to try another one?" I don't have another one." "You got cash?" I looked at the $20 bill on the table. The pizza was $22.50 plus tip. "No," I whispered. "Sorry, kid. Call back when you got the money." The line went dead. I stood there with the phone in my hand. The dial tone buzzed in my ear like an angry insect. Not activated. She hadn't activated the card. She had walked out the door, flown to Europe, and left me with a piece of plastic that was useless. Did she forget? Or did she just not care enough to check? I put the phone down. The hunger in my stomach wasn't a game anymore. It was a sharp pain. I looked at the $20. I couldn't spend it all on one pizza. I had 30 days, that was less than $1 a day. I went to the pantry. It was a tall, narrow closet. I opened the door. My parents didn't eat carbs. There were no boxes of macaroni and cheese. There were no bags of chips. There were no cookies. On the bottom shelf, I found a loaf of whole wheat bread. It was the kind with the seeds in it that I hated. I checked the date. It was good for another week. Next to it was a box of high-fiber cereal. It looked like cardboard flakes. Okay, I said, I can do this. I took 2 slices of bread. I didn't toast them because I was afraid to use the toaster. What if I burned the house down? Mom said I wasn't allowed to use the appliances, so I ate the bread cold. It was dry and scratched my throat. I drank a glass of water from the tap to wash it down. That night the house changed. During the day the house was just big. At night it was alive. I went upstairs to my room. I locked my bedroom door. I had never locked my door before. My dad didn't like locked doors. He said secrets were for liars. But Dad wasn't here. I got into bed and pulled the covers up to my chin. The silence wasn't silent anymore. I heard the refrigerator hum downstairs. I heard the wind hit the windows. I heard the house settling, the wood creaking like footsteps. Creak, step, creak, I squeezed my eyes shut. You're independent, I told myself. You're fine. You're fine. I fell asleep holding my pillow, imagining it was a person who cared about me. The next morning, day 2, I woke up and for a second I forgot. I lay in bed waiting to hear my mom's heels clicking on the floor. I waited to hear the coffee machine. Then I remembered. The silence rushed back in. I got dressed for school. I put on my favorite blue shirt. I brushed my hair. I looked in the mirror. I looked normal. That was the weirdest part. I looked like a girl who had parents. I looked like a girl who had breakfast. I went to the kitchen. I ate a handful of the dry cereal. It tasted like dust. I walked to the bus stop. I saw Mrs. Johnson, our neighbor, watering her flowers. She waved at me. Morning, Ava, parents off on their trip, she called out. I froze. My mom had told me not to tell anyone I was alone. She said people would overreact and cause trouble. She said it was our business. Yes, I called back. I forced a smile. My cheeks hurt. My aunt is staying with me. She's inside. Mrs. Johnson nodded. That's good. Have a good day at school. I got on the bus. I felt like a spy. I felt like I was carrying a bomb in my backpack, but the bomb was just a secret. At lunch, I sat with my friends. They had sandwiches cut into triangles. They had apples and juice boxes. I had nothing. Where's your lunch, Ava? My friend Maya asked. I forgot it, I lied. My aunt made a huge breakfast, pancakes, eggs. I'm so full I could explode. Lucky, Maya said. She bit into her ham sandwich. I watched her eat. I watched her chew. My mouth filled with saliva. I had to look away. I drank water from the fountain until my stomach felt sloshy and full, but it was a fake full. It didn't stop the shaking in my hands. When I got home that afternoon, the house felt even bigger. The sun was hot, but the inside of the house was cold. The AC was set to 68 degrees. I didn't know how to change it. I went to the pantry again. I counted the slices of bread. 14 slices left. If I ate 2 slices a day, that was 7 days. 7 days. Mom was gone for 30. I did the math in my head. I wasn't good at math, but I knew this equation didn't work. I took 1 slice of bread. I tore it into tiny pieces. I ate them slowly, one by one, trying to make it last. I thought about calling my grandma. But Grandma lived in Florida, and she always took Mom's side. If I called her and said I was hungry, she would call Mom. Mom would get mad. Mom would say I was being dramatic. Mom would say I was failing at being independent. I couldn't fail. If I failed, they would be right about me. They always said I was needy and too sensitive. I had to prove I was strong, so I ate my slice of bread. I drank my water, and I waited for the sun to go down again. By day 5, the dizziness started. It wasn't a spinning kind of dizziness. It was a light, floating feeling. When I stood up from the sofa, the room would tilt to the left. Black spots would dance in front of my eyes like little flies. I had to grab the wall to keep from falling. I was rationing the bread. 1 slice in the morning, 1 slice at night. The cereal was gone. I had eaten it dry, handful by handful, until I was tipping the box upside down to get the dust at the bottom. I was always cold. Even when I went outside in the sun, I was cold. My fingers looked pale. My nails looked blue. I sat at the kitchen table. The silence in the house was heavy now. It pressed against my ears. It felt like the house was holding its breath, waiting for me to fade away. I looked at the pile of mail on the counter. It was mostly catalogs and bills for my dad, but underneath a magazine, I saw a notebook. It was a black moleskin notebook. My dad used these for work. This one was unused. It was crisp and clean. I grabbed a pen from the drawer. I opened the notebook to the first page. The paper was smooth. I didn't know why I did it. Maybe I wanted to prove I existed. Maybe I wanted to make sure I wasn't imagining this. I wrote in big block letters at the top of the page, evidence. Underneath, I wrote the date. Day 5. Breakfast, 1 slice of bread. Water. Lunch, water. Dinner, nothing yet. Feeling tired. My head hurts behind my eyes. Mom and dad location, Europe, somewhere with wine. Writing it down made me feel a little stronger. It was like taking the secret out of my body and putting it on the paper. I looked at my phone. It was an old iPhone my dad gave me when he upgraded. The screen was cracked. I opened the camera app. I switched it to video. I saw my face on the screen. I looked terrible. My skin was gray. My eyes had dark circles under them like bruises. My hair was messy because it took too much energy to brush it perfectly. I pressed the red button. "Hi," I whispered. I cleared my throat. My voice was raspy because I hadn't spoken to anyone in 2 days. "Hi, I'm Ava." I looked at the camera lens. "It's day 5, I'm still alone. If something happens to me, or if you're seeing this, it means someone finally asked what happened." I took a breath. My chest rattled. The credit card didn't work. "Mom, if you see this, the card didn't work. You didn't turn it on. I tried to buy pizza. I tried to buy milk. The man said declined." I felt so stupid. I felt like a criminal. Tears pricked my eyes. I blinked them away. I wasn't going to cry on the video. Crying was for babies. I was independent. There's not much food left. The bread is getting hard. It has green spots on the crust now. I pick them off. I'm really hungry. My stomach hurts all the time, but now it's a dull hurt. It's like a hole inside me getting bigger. I paused. I heard a car drive by outside. It sounded normal. People were driving to work. People were going to the grocery store. The world was normal, but my world was falling apart. "I just wanted you to know," I said to the camera. "I tried. I really tried to be good. But I don't think I can do this for a month. I'm scared." I stopped the recording. I saved it. I didn't send it to anyone. I just kept it there, next to the photos of my cat and my drawings. My phone buzzed. It scared me so bad I almost dropped it. It was a text from Maya. "Maya, hey, you coming to the movie tonight? My mom can pick you up." I stared at the screen. A movie. Popcorn, soda, laughing. It sounded like a different planet. I wanted to type, "Yes, please come get me, I am starving." My parents left me. "Help," my thumb hovered over the letters. But then I heard my mother's voice in my head. "Don't be a burden, Ava. Don't air our dirty laundry. Nobody likes a complainer." Shame washed over me. It was hot and sticky. If I told Maya's mom, everyone would know. The school would know. My parents would get in trouble. And when they came back, they would blame me. They would say I ruined their trip. They would say I was weak. I couldn't handle their anger. Their anger was worse than the hunger. I typed, "Can't. My aunt is taking me to a fancy dinner tonight. Having so much fun." I added a smiley face emoji. The yellow face looked mocking. I sent it. "Maya, oh nice, see you Monday." I put the phone down. "A fancy dinner," I laughed. It was a dry, hacking laugh. I went to the kitchen. I opened the bread bag. 3 slices left. I took one. I ate it in tiny bites, chewing each bite 20 times. That night I woke up because I heard a noise. It wasn't the house settling. It was a knock. I sat up in bed. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. Knock, knock, knock. It was coming from the front door. I looked at the clock. It was 8 p.m. Who would come at 8 p.m.? A robber, a murderer, or Mom? Maybe she came back. Maybe she remembered the card. Maybe she felt bad. I got out of bed. The floor swayed. I held onto the dresser. I walked into the hallway. I crept down the stairs. I stayed close to the wall so the floorboards wouldn't squeak. I got to the front door. I stood on my tiptoes to look through the peephole. It wasn't Mom. It was a man. He was wearing a jacket. He was holding a clipboard. I didn't open the door. I held my breath. He knocked again. "Ava, Ava, are you in there?" I recognized the voice. It wasn't a stranger. It was Mr. Hughes, the guidance counselor from school. Why was he here? I had missed 2 days of school. I had been too dizzy to walk to the bus stop. I thought nobody would notice. I was the quiet kid in the back of the class. Quiet kids disappear easily, but he was here. Ava, he called out. I saw a light on upstairs, I just want to check on you. I leaned my forehead against the cold wood of the door. If I opened it, the secret was out. If I opened it, I failed. But my stomach cramped hard. A sharp, twisting pain. I don't want to die, I thought. The thought was sudden and clear. I don't want to be independent if it means dying. My hand reached for the lock. The deadbolt was heavy. I had to use 2 hands to turn it. It made a loud thunk. I turned the handle and opened the door just a crack. The safety chain was still on. I peered through the gap with one eye. Mr. Hughes was standing on the porch. He looked kind. He had a round face and glasses that slid down his nose. He looked worried. Ava, he said softly. He bent down a little to look at me. Hi there. Hi, I whispered. I haven't seen you at school since Wednesday, he said. I tried calling your parents, but the numbers went straight to voicemail. Is your aunt home? I froze, my lie, the aunt. She's sleeping, I said. It was a weak lie. My voice trembled. Mr. Hughes frowned. He looked at me closely through the crack in the door. Ava, you look very pale. Are you feeling okay? I'm fine, I said automatically. I just have the flu. Can you wake your aunt up? I just need to speak with an adult to make sure you're all right. It's school policy. I didn't move. I couldn't wake up someone who didn't exist. Mr. Hughes stood up straight. He looked around the porch. He saw the pile of newspapers that had accumulated on the mat because I forgot to bring them in. He saw that the porch light wasn't on. Ava, he said, his voice firmer now. Is there an adult in the house with you right now? I looked at him. I looked at his eyes. They weren't angry. They were scared. He was scared for me. I started to cry. I didn't mean to. The tears just spilled out hot and fast. No, I choked out. Mr. Hughes's face changed. The polite counselor look vanished. He looked alert. Okay, he said calmly. Okay, Ava, can you undo the chain? I need you to open the door. My hands were shaking so bad I fumbled with the chain. I couldn't get the metal knob out of the slot. Take your time, he said gently. Just breathe. I got it free. The chain rattled against the door. I pulled the door open. Mr. Hughes stepped inside. He didn't ask for permission. He stepped in and closed the door behind him to keep the cold air out. He looked at me. Really looked at me. I was wearing my oversized t-shirt and sweatpants. My clothes hung off me. I hadn't showered in 3 days. Where are your parents, Ava? He asked. Europe, I said. I looked at the floor. They went to Europe. Europe, he sounded shocked. When? 5 days ago. And you've been here alone? I nodded. They left me $20 and a card, but the card doesn't work. Mr. Hughes let out a breath that sounded like a hiss. He looked around the grand, empty hallway. He looked at the expensive chandelier. Then he looked back at me, the shivering girl in the middle of it all. Okay, come with me. He walked toward the kitchen. I followed him. I felt like I was in trouble. I felt like I had broken a rule by letting him in. He walked into the kitchen and turned on the light. The harsh fluorescent light made everything look stark. He walked to the fridge and opened it. He saw the empty shelves, the jar of olives, the slimy spinach. He closed the fridge gentle, but his hand was gripping the handle tight. He turned to the pantry. He saw the bread bag with 2 slices left. He saw the empty cereal box in the recycling bin. He turned around and looked at me. His face was red. You haven't eaten, he said. It wasn't a question. I had bread, I defended myself. And water for 5 days. I'm independent, I whispered. Mom said I had to be independent. Mr. Hughes knelt down on the kitchen floor so he was eye level with me. He took my hands. His hands were warm and dry. My hands were like ice. Ava, listen to me, he said. His voice was intense. This is not independence, this is neglect. The word hung in the air, neglect. I had heard that word on TV. It was a bad word. It was for dirty houses and bad parents. My parents weren't bad. They were rich. They were successful. No, I said, pulling my hands away. They trusted me. I messed up. I couldn't make the money last. You had $20, Mr. Hughes said. Nobody can make that last, not a child. This is not your fault. He stood up and pulled his phone out of his pocket. I'm going to make a phone call, he said. I'm going to call for some help, and I'm going to order you some food. What do you want to eat? Pizza, I said immediately. Pepperoni. Done. He walked to the corner of the kitchen. I heard him talking low and fast. I heard words like abandonment, imminent danger, and CPS. I stood by the counter. I touched my notebook, the one labeled evidence. I realized something then. Mr. Hughes wasn't looking at me like I was a failure. He was looking at the situation. He was angry at the empty fridge, not at the hungry girl. The truth wasn't destroying me. The truth was the only thing standing between me and another hungry night. I picked up the notebook. When Mr. Hughes hung up, I held it out to him. "What's this?" he asked. "It's what happened," I said. "I wrote it down." He took the black book. He opened it. He read the entry from day 5. He read it twice. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. "You are a very brave girl, Ava," he said. "You did exactly the right thing." For the first time in 5 days, the knot in my stomach loosened just a little bit. I wasn't invisible anymore. 20 minutes later, the doorbell rang. It wasn't the police. It was Mrs. Johnson from next door. She was wearing her bathrobe and slippers. Her hair was in curlers. She looked frantic. "Mr. Hughes," she said when he opened the door. "I saw your car. Is everything okay? I saw you go in." Then she saw me sitting at the kitchen table. Mr. Hughes stepped aside. "Mrs. Johnson, come in." Mrs. Johnson walked into the kitchen. She looked at me, then at the empty counter, then at Mr. Hughes. "Ava told me her aunt was here," Mrs. Johnson said, confused. "There is no aunt," Mr. Hughes said grimly. "Her parents are in Europe. She's been alone for 5 days with no food." Mrs. Johnson gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God, Ava, honey." She rushed over to me and wrapped her arms around me. She smelled like lavender laundry detergent. She felt soft and warm. It was the hug I had waited for at the front door 5 days ago. I melted into her. I started crying again, but this time it wasn't out of fear. It was relief. "I didn't want to tell," I sobbed into her robe. "Mom said not to tell." SHH, Mrs. Johnson stroked my hair. "You poor baby, you poor sweet thing. Oh, I'm going to kill them. I am going to kill them." She sounded fierce. It surprised me. Mrs. Johnson was a nice old lady who baked cookies. I didn't know she could sound like a warrior. The pizza arrived 10 minutes later. Mr. Hughes paid for it. I ate 3 slices so fast I almost choked. Mrs. Johnson made me slow down. She poured me a glass of milk from a carton she ran home to get from her own fridge. While I ate, another car pulled into the driveway. "That's the caseworker," Mr. Hughes said. He looked out the window. "Her name is Miss Ramirez. She's going to help us figure out where you're going to stay tonight." "Stay?" I stopped chewing. "I can't stay here." "You can't stay here alone, Ava," Mr. Hughes said gently. "It's against the law." Miss Ramirez was a tall woman with a clipboard and a camera around her neck. She came into the kitchen. She didn't smile, but she had kind eyes. "Hello, Ava," she said. "I'm Miss Ramirez. I work for Child Protective Services." She looked at Mr. Hughes. "Is this the situation?" "Yes," he said. He handed her my notebook. "And you should see the fridge." Miss Ramirez read the notebook. Her eyebrows went up. She took her camera and started taking pictures. She took a picture of the empty fridge. She took a picture of the bread bag. She took a picture of the $20 bill sitting on the counter. She took a picture of the unactivated credit card. Click, click, click. Every click felt like a hammer hitting a nail. She was building a case. She was building a wall around me to keep my parents out. "This is excellent documentation," Miss Ramirez said to me. "You're very smart to write this down, Ava." "I made a video too," I said. My voice was stronger now that my stomach was full. I showed her the video on my phone. Miss Ramirez watched it. She watched my gray face on the screen whispering about being hungry. "Can you send that to me?" she asked. "I need that for the file." I sent it to her. "Okay," Miss Ramirez said. "We have enough. This is clear child abandonment and neglect." She turned to me. "Ava, do you have any relatives nearby? A grandma?" "An aunt. Grandma is in Florida," I said. "But she'll tell Mom." Miss Ramirez nodded. "We won't call Grandma yet. Do you have anywhere else you feel safe?" I looked at Mrs. Johnson. She was still standing next to me, her hand on my shoulder. "I want to go with Mrs. Johnson," I said. "She smells like lavender." Mrs. Johnson squeezed my shoulder. "She can stay with me. I have a guest room. My husband and I are approved foster parents from years ago. Our license might be expired, but we can renew it. Please, don't take her to a shelter." Miss Ramirez looked at Mrs. Johnson. Then she looked at the clean, warm neighbor who was ready to fight for me. "I can do an emergency placement with a neighbor," Miss Ramirez said. "If you can pass a quick background check right now." "Check whatever you want," Mrs. Johnson said. While they did the paperwork, Miss Ramirez told me to go pack a bag. "Pack clothes for a week," she said, "and bring anything special to you." I went upstairs to my room. I packed my jeans and my t-shirts. I packed my toothbrush. Then I looked around my room. It didn't feel like my room anymore. It felt like a museum exhibit of a girl who used to be sad. I grabbed my teddy bear, I grabbed my school backpack, and I grabbed the notebook labeled evidence. I walked back downstairs. The house was loud now. Mr. Hughes was talking to the police officer who had just arrived to file a report. Miss Ramirez was on the phone with her supervisor. Mrs. Johnson was bustling around helping me zip my jacket. I wasn't invisible, I was the center of everything. We walked out the front door. The air outside was cool and fresh. I looked back at my house. The lights were all on. The front door was wide open. It looked like a party was happening, but it was a party for the end of my family. Mrs. Johnson took my hand. "Come on, honey. I've got a chocolate cake in the freezer we can thaw out." I squeezed her hand. "Okay," I said. I walked down the driveway and crossed the lawn to Mrs. Johnson's house. I didn't look back at the empty mansion. I was safe. I was fed. And for the first time in my life, the adults were listening to me instead of my mother. The silence was broken, and I was the one who broke it. Mrs. Johnson's house was different from mine. It wasn't just smaller, it felt fuller. Every wall had a picture on it, not expensive art that looked like splashes of paint, but photos of people smiling. There were soft rugs everywhere. The air smelled like vanilla and pot roast, a smell that made my stomach growl even though I had just eaten pizza. I sat on her floral couch, wrapped in a yellow knitted blanket. My hands were finally warm. Mr. Hughes had gone home to his own family, promising to check on me first thing at school on Monday. Miss Ramirez, the CPS lady, had left a card and a file folder on the table. It was quiet, but a good quiet. It was a safe quiet. Then the phone rang. It wasn't Mrs. Johnson's landline. It was my cell phone, sitting on the coffee table. The screen lit up, buzzing against the wood. "Mom," the letters on the screen looked like a warning. My heart slammed against my ribs. The piece of the warm blanket evaporated. I was 11 years old, and I was terrified of a phone call. Mrs. Johnson was in the kitchen washing mugs. She dried her hands on a towel and came into the living room. She looked at the phone, then at me. "Is that them?" she asked. I nodded. My throat felt too tight to speak. "Do you want me to answer it?" she asked gently. I shook my head. Miss Ramirez had said I didn't have to talk to them, but I knew my mother. If I didn't answer, she would call the police. She would call the neighbors. She would make a scene not because she was worried, but because she couldn't control me. I picked up the phone. My hand was shaking so much the screen blurred. I pressed the green button. "Hello," I whispered. "Ava." My mother's voice was crisp and clear. She didn't sound panicked. She didn't sound like a mother who had just found out her child was starving. She sounded annoyed. She sounded like she does when a waiter brings her the wrong wine. "Ava, why is the police department calling my cell phone in Paris?" She didn't ask, "Are you okay?" She didn't ask, "Did you eat?" She asked why the police were bothering her. I stammered. The old habit of trying to please her kicked in. "I didn't call them. Mr. Hughes did." "Mr. Hughes." "The guidance counselor." She let out a sharp, exasperated sigh. I could hear clinking silverware in the background. She was at a restaurant. "Why is the school involved?" "I told you specifically, Ava. I told you specifically that this was a test of your independence. Why are you bringing strangers into our business?" "Mom, I didn't have any food," I said. My voice was small. "The card didn't work." "The card?" She paused. "Oh, for heaven's sake. You probably entered the PIN wrong, or you could have just waited. Dad would have fixed it online eventually, but instead, you have the police calling us. Do you know how embarrassing this is?" She was worried about embarrassment. She was in Paris, eating dinner, and I had been eating bread crusts, and she was worried about looking bad. "I was hungry," I said, louder this time. "Stop being dramatic," she snapped. "You always do this. You make everything a tragedy. We are coming home. We had to cancel our vineyard tour. Dad is furious. We are flying back tonight. I hope you're happy." "I'm staying with Mrs. Johnson," I said. "You are what?" Her voice went up an octave. "You are at the neighbor's house. Ava, get back in our house right now. You do not air our dirty laundry to that gossip." Mrs. Johnson was standing right next to me. She could hear the voice coming through the phone. Her face turned red. She reached out and took the phone from my hand. "Hello," Mrs. Johnson said. Her voice wasn't soft anymore. It was hard as rock. "Mrs. Johnson," my mother sounded shocked. "Put my daughter back on." "No," Mrs. Johnson said. "I will not. Your daughter is safe, which is more than she was in your house. She was starving, Linda. She weighed nothing when she walked in here." "You are overreacting," my mother said. I could hear the sneer in her voice. "She's a growing girl. She eats constantly. We left her money. We left her a card. We are raising her to be self-sufficient. You left an 11-year-old child alone for a month with $20, Mrs. Johnson shouted. She never shouted. That isn't self-sufficiency. That is abuse. The police know, CPS knows, and I know. There was silence on the other end of the line. The word abuse hung in the air. We'll be there tomorrow, my mother said, her voice icy cold. And we will straighten this mess out. Ava has clearly manipulated the situation. The only thing Ava did was survive you, Mrs. Johnson said. She hung up the phone. She looked at me. Her hands were shaking now, too. She put the phone down and sat next to me on the couch. She pulled me into a hug that squeezed the breath out of me. I'm sorry you heard that, she said into my hair. It's okay, I said, and it was. Because for the first time the script had flipped. Usually when Mom yelled, I felt small. I felt like I had done something wrong. But this time, hearing her voice against Mrs. Johnson's logic, I realized something huge. She wasn't mad because I was hurt. She was mad because I was loud. I wasn't a person to her. I was a doll that was supposed to sit on the shelf and smile while she played the perfect mother in public. But the doll had walked off the shelf. I looked at the black notebook sitting on the table. Evidence. My mother was coming home to save her reputation. She thought she could talk her way out of it. She thought she could smile and explain that I was just a confused, dramatic child. She didn't know about the photos. She didn't know about the video. She didn't know that Mr. Hughes had seen the empty fridge. She was rushing home to a fight she had already lost. They're coming tomorrow, I told Mrs. Johnson. Good, Mrs. Johnson said, smoothing my hair. Let them come, we'll be waiting. I slept in the guest room that night. The bed was soft. The sheets smelled like lavender. But I didn't sleep deeply. I lay awake planning. I wasn't just a victim anymore, I was a witness. And tomorrow I was going to testify. The next afternoon my house looked different. It wasn't empty anymore. It was full of people, but not for a party. It looked like a command center. Miss Ramirez was there with her supervisor, a stern man named Mr. Clark. Mr. Hughes was there, sitting at the kitchen table with a notepad. Mrs. Johnson was there, refusing to leave my side. A police officer stood by the back door, arms crossed. They had turned my kitchen, the place where I had starved, into a courtroom. On the granite island, the evidence was laid out. The black notebook, open to the page where I wrote about the dizziness. The printed photos of the empty fridge. The $20 bill, placed inside a clear plastic bag like it was a weapon. The phone log showing 0 calls from Europe for 5 days. I sat on a stool in the corner. I was wearing clean clothes Mrs. Johnson had washed for me. I had eaten a real breakfast, eggs, toast, fruit. My brain felt sharp. The fog of hunger was gone. They're here, the police officer said. He was looking out the front window. A taxi pulled into the driveway. I felt a spike of fear in my chest. It was instinct. The sound of the car engine usually meant act perfect, smile, hide. I started to slide off the stool. Stay right there, Ava, Miss Ramirez said softly. She moved to stand between me and the hallway. You don't have to go to them. Let them come to us. I heard the front door open. Ava, my dad's voice boomed through the hallway. It was his fun dad voice, the one he used when people were watching. Ava Bear. We're home. He was trying to pretend everything was normal. He was trying to set the tone before he even saw anyone. Linda, the door was unlocked, he said to my mom. Careless. We'll have to talk to her about security. They walked into the kitchen. They were tan. They looked healthy and rich. My mom was wearing a white linen scarf and sunglasses. My dad was in a polo shirt. They looked like they had just stepped off a yacht. They stopped dead when they saw the room. They saw the police officer. They saw the 2 CPS workers in suits. They saw Mr. Hughes. They saw Mrs. Johnson glaring at them. And they saw me sitting in the corner, not smiling, not running to hug them. What on earth is going on? My mom pulled off her sunglasses. Her eyes darted around the room. Who are all these people in my house? Mr. and Mrs. Miller, Miss Ramirez said. Her voice was calm and professional. I am Miss Ramirez from Child Protective Services. This is my supervisor, Mr. Clark. And you know Officer Davis. Child Protective Services? My dad laughed. It was a nervous, angry laugh. This is ridiculous. We were on vacation. Our daughter was left with ample provisions. Is this about the neighbor calling? Linda, I told you the neighbor was nosy. He glared at Mrs. Johnson. This is about the fact that your daughter was found alone, malnourished, and without access to funds for 5 days, Miss Ramirez said. She had money, my mom stepped forward. She pointed at me. Ava, tell them, I gave you $20 and the credit card. Where is the card? It's right there, Mr. Clark said. He pointed to the evidence table. We checked the bank records, Mrs. Miller. That card was never activated, and the account attached to it has a balance of 0. My mom's face went pale. That's a banking error. I meant to transfer the money. We were busy packing. It was an oversight. And the food, Mr. Hughes spoke up. I looked in your fridge, Linda. There was nothing, just condiments and alcohol. Your daughter was eating dry bread. She knows how to order delivery, my dad shouted. She's 11, not 5. She's smart. She could have called us if she was having trouble. I couldn't call, I said. My voice cut through the noise. Everyone stopped and looked at me. I stood up. I wasn't dizzy anymore. I couldn't call because you told me not to be a burden, I said. You said this was a test. You said if I called I was failing. I never said that, my mom lied instantly. She looked at the police officer. She imagines things. She's very sensitive. I have it on video, I said. My mom froze. What? I recorded it, I said. Before you left, when you were giving me the lecture in the hallway, you said, don't bother us unless the house is burning down. Figure it out? I didn't actually have that specific video. I only had the one of me alone, but my mom didn't know that. She knew what she had said. The fear in her eyes told everyone the truth. Miss Ramirez stepped forward. We have documented evidence of neglect, child endangerment, and emotional abuse. The condition of the home and the child's physical state when found are irrefutable. So what? My dad puffed out his chest. You're going to give us a fine? Fine. Write the ticket. We have lawyers. Now get out of our house and let us parent our child. He moved toward me. He reached out his hand to grab my arm. Come on, Ava. Go to your room. The police officer stepped in front of him. He put a hand on his belt. Sir, step back, the officer said. Excuse me. My dad's face turned purple. Your daughter isn't going to her room, Miss Ramirez said. She picked up a piece of paper from the table. We have an emergency removal order signed by a judge an hour ago. Ava is currently in the custody of the state. The silence that followed was louder than the door clicking shut 5 days ago. My mother dropped her expensive bag on the floor. You're taking her, she whispered. But what will people think? She didn't ask is she okay. She didn't ask where will she go. She asked what will people think. I looked at Mrs. Johnson. She nodded at me, a tiny, encouraging nod. I walked over to the table. I picked up my notebook. I wrote it all down, I said to my parents. I held up the book. Every day, every meal I skipped, every time I felt dizzy. It's all in here. My dad looked at the notebook like it was a bomb. Ava, put that down, he commanded. His voice wavered. Stop this game right now. It's not a game, I said. You told me to be independent, so I am. I'm saving myself from you. I turned my back on them. I walked over to stand next to Miss Ramirez. I'm ready to go, I said. My mother started to cry then, but it was a performance. She covered her face with her hands. My baby. They're stealing my baby. I watched her with dry eyes. I knew the difference now. I knew what real concern looked like. It looked like Mr. Hughes kneeling on the floor and Mrs. Johnson bringing me warm milk. This was just noise. The police officer escorted them to the living room so we could leave. I walked out of the kitchen. I walked out of the house. I didn't look at the white furniture. I didn't look at the chandelier. I walked out into the fresh air, and I didn't look back. The next few weeks were a blur of meetings, but they were different kinds of meetings. They were safe meetings. I stayed with Mrs. Johnson. Miss Ramirez had approved her as an emergency kinship foster placement because we were neighbors and she had known me my whole life. My parents tried to fight it. They hired a big, expensive lawyer. They tried to say Mrs. Johnson was a hostile neighbor who kidnapped me, but they couldn't fight the notebook. And they couldn't fight the video. The court hearing was 3 weeks later. It was in a small room with a big wooden table. A judge sat at the end. She was an older woman with glasses on a chain. I had to be there. I sat next to a lawyer appointed just for me, a guardian ad litem. Her name was Sarah. She was nice. She explained everything to me. My parents were on the other side of the table. They looked different. They weren't tan anymore. They looked tired. My mom wasn't wearing her fancy scarves. She was wearing a gray suit. She looked small. The judge read the file. She looked at the photos Miss Ramirez had taken. Then she played the video. The room was silent as my voice played from the speakers. It's day 5, I'm still alone, the bread has green spots. I watched my parents while the video played. My dad was staring at the table, his jaw clenched tight. He wouldn't look at the screen. My mom was looking at the judge, trying to make eye contact, trying to smile a sad, apologetic smile. She was still trying to charm the judge. When the video ended, the judge took off her glasses. She looked at my parents. "Mr. and Mrs. Miller," she said. Her voice was very quiet, which made it very scary. "I have seen many cases of neglect in this courtroom. Usually, it is because of poverty. Usually, it is because parents are struggling with addiction or illness." She paused. "You have none of those excuses. You have money, you have resources, you simply didn't care." "We made a mistake," my dad said. He stood up. "We thought she was mature enough. We were trying to teach her responsibility." "Responsibility," the judge snapped. "You left an 11-year-old with $20 for a month. That isn't teaching responsibility. That is cruelty." She looked at me. "Ava, do you want to say anything?" Sarah, my lawyer, touched my arm. "You don't have to, Ava, but you can if you want." I stood up. My knees were shaking a little, but my voice was steady. I looked at my mom. "You told me actions have consequences," I said. "You used to tell me that when I spilled juice on the rug. You told me that when I got a B on a test." My mom flinched. "You left me," I said. "You didn't care if I ate. You didn't care if I was scared. You only cared when people found out." I took a deep breath. "These are your consequences." I sat down. The judge nodded. She banged her gavel. "I am sustaining the removal," she said. "Ava will remain in the custody of the state, placed with Mrs. Johnson. Mr. and Mrs. Miller, I am ordering a full psychological evaluation for both of you. You will attend parenting classes, anger management, and family therapy. You are granted 1 hour of supervised visitation per week, at the discretion of the child." At the discretion of the child, that meant I could say no. My mom gasped. "But she's ours." "Not right now, she isn't," the judge said. "Right now, she belongs to herself, and the state is going to help her keep it that way." As we left the courtroom, my mom tried to run to me. "Ava, Ava, please. Tell them you want to come home. We'll buy you anything. We'll go to Disney World." Officer Davis stepped between us. "Step back, ma'am," he said. I looked at her one last time. She was offering me Disney World like a bribe. She still didn't get it. I didn't want rides. I didn't want toys. I wanted to not be hungry. I wanted to matter more than a trip to Europe. "I don't want to go to Disney World," I said calmly. "I want to go to Mrs. Johnson's house. We're making lasagna tonight." I turned around and walked away with Sarah and Mrs. Johnson. My parents were left standing in the hallway of the courthouse. They looked confused. They had all the money in the world, but they couldn't buy their way out of this. They had written the story of their own abandonment. I just read it out loud. Life at Mrs. Johnson's house was weird at first. It was weird because it was normal. I wasn't used to normal. I was used to walking on eggshells. I was used to being quiet. At Mrs. Johnson's, I didn't have to be quiet. Her husband, Mr. Johnson, was a loud, happy man who watched baseball and cheered at the TV. They had a dog named Buster who barked at squirrels. The first time I dropped a plate in the kitchen, I froze. I squeezed my eyes shut and waited for the yelling. I waited to be told I was clumsy and ungrateful. "Oops," Mrs. Johnson said. I opened one eye. She was sweeping up the pieces. "Careful, honey, don't step on the shards," she said. "Grab the dustpan for me." You're not mad?" I asked. My voice was trembling. She looked at me, surprised. "Mad? It's a plate, Ava. It costs $2 at Target. Accidents happen." I started crying. I cried over a broken plate. Mrs. Johnson hugged me right there in the kitchen, carefully avoiding the broken ceramic. "Oh, honey," she whispered. "You don't have to be perfect here, you just have to be." That was the hardest lesson, just being. I started seeing a therapist. Her name was Dr. Lewis. She helped me understand that what happened to me wasn't a mistake or a test. It was trauma. She told me that my parents were likely narcissists. They couldn't see me as a person, only as an extension of themselves. When I was good and quiet, I made them look good. When I was needy or hungry, I was a problem. Understanding that helped. It meant I wasn't broken. They were. I kept writing in my notebook, but I crossed out the word evidence on the cover. I wrote in my life instead. I wrote about school. I wrote about how Maya and I watched movies. I wrote about how Mr. Hughes checked on me every Friday and gave me a high five. I wrote about the supervised visits. I decided to see them once. Just once. We met at the CPS office. There was a lady sitting in the corner taking notes. My parents brought gifts. A new iPad, expensive clothes, a gold necklace. "Look, Ava," my dad said, pushing the boxes toward me. "We're sorry, we know we messed up. But look at all this stuff. You can't get this at the neighbor's house." I looked at the pile of expensive things. It looked like a trap. I don't need an iPad, I said. Of course you do, my mom said. She looked thin and stressed. You love games. Come home, Ava. We fired the housekeeper. We'll get a nanny, someone to cook for you every day. I don't want a nanny, I said. Mrs. Johnson teaches me how to cook. We made stew yesterday. My mom wrinkled her nose. Stew, that's peasant food. And there it was. Even now, even after losing custody, she was judging the food that was keeping me alive. It was warm, I said. And we ate it together at the table. We talked. We can talk, my dad said desperately. You talk at me, I said. You don't talk to me. I stood up. I don't want the gifts. You can take them back. Ava, wait, my mom pleaded. When are you coming home? The judge said 6 months. It's been 3. We're doing the classes. We're doing everything they want. I don't know, I said honestly. I looked at the CPS worker. I'm done now. Okay, Ava, she said. I walked out. I left the gold necklace on the table. I went back to Mrs. Johnson's house. I helped her weed the garden. I got dirt under my fingernails. I felt real. The 6-month mark came and went. The judge asked me what I wanted. I told her I didn't feel safe with them yet. I told her about the iPad. I told her they still tried to buy me. The judge extended the placement. My parents were furious. They screamed in the courtroom. They proved the judge right. They showed everyone that their anger was more important than my feelings. I stayed with Mrs. Johnson. I turned 12. Then 13. I grew up. I stopped being the scared little girl in the hallway. I became a teenager who knew her rights. I knew that love wasn't leaving someone alone with $20. Love was staying. It's been 5 years since the door clicked shut. I'm 16 now. I still live with Mrs. Johnson. My parents eventually stopped fighting the court. They moved to another state. They send checks. They send cards on my birthday with no handwritten messages, just a signature. Love, Mom and Dad. I keep the cards in a box, but I don't put them up on the wall. The wall is for people who stay. I look at the video on my phone sometimes. The one from day 5, the girl with the gray face and the scared eyes. I used to hate her. I used to think she was weak. Now I love her. She was the one who saved me. She was the one who picked up the pen. She was the one who opened the door to Mr. Hughes. If she hadn't been brave enough to break the rules, I might have starved in that big, white house. Or worse, I might have grown up to be just like them, cold, empty, and obsessed with how things look instead of how they feel. I sit on the porch of Mrs. Johnson's house. I'm eating an apple. It's crisp and sweet. I think about forgiveness. People tell me I should forgive them. They say, they're your parents, you only get one set. Maybe. But I learned that forgiveness doesn't mean opening the door again. You can forgive someone and still keep the chain lock on. You can forgive the fire for burning you, but you don't put your hand back in the flame. I am protected now. Not by money, but by truth. I open my old notebook. I turn to a blank page. I write, day 1825. Breakfast. Pancakes with Mrs. Johnson. Feeling happy, location, home. I close the book. I look directly at you now. Yes, you. Maybe you're like me. Maybe you feel invisible in your own house. Maybe you're hungry for something more than just food. I want you to know something. You are allowed to make noise. You are allowed to open the door. You are allowed to ask for more than $20 worth of love. If this story reached you, don't keep it a secret. Don't be like I was, hiding in the dark, afraid to ruin someone's reputation. Ruin it. If their reputation is built on your silence, it deserves to be ruined. So please share this story, like it, pass it on. Because somewhere, right now, there is another kid standing in a hallway, holding a crumpled bill, wondering if they matter. And they need to know that the answer is yes.